Hello and welcome to Latter-day Profiles. I'm Brian Howard. We're here on the road in Independence, Missouri at the Visitor Center. And joining me today is Elder Jeremiah Morgan. Welcome.
Thanks. Great to be with you.
Such a pleasure to have you here. And you reached out to us at BYU, Idaho a few months ago. And we have some students out here right now who are visiting and looking at possibilities for careers out in this area. So thankful that you would invite us out, and good to have you here.
We're excited to have you here. We're excited to have those students here too. Bring them all, I say.
Well, let's talk about, I want to find a little bit of your background. Currently, right now, you're in Area Authority 70. You have responsibilities for Missouri, Kansas, Illinois, and Iowa. That's a lot of area to cover. In addition, I don't know, it's the day job. They kind of roll over each other. But the job you get paid for is Deputy Attorney General of the state of Missouri. You've been a lawyer for quite some time and been involved in leadership in this area and grew up in this area. So
I did, actually. It's interesting sitting here in the Independence Visitor Center. Years ago, this was actually a movie theater.
Oh, really?
And when I wasn't raised in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I was raised in the Reorganized Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Every 2 years, they had their World Conference. And when that was happening, as a young kid, I'd come to the Visitor Center and I'd watch movies.
Oh, how fun.
And one of my all-time favorite stories in this regard is that I have probably seen Johnny Lingo more times than any member of the church. So right here, right where we're sitting here.
One of my favorites. That's right. When we did Baptisms for the Dead, that was the movie we watched as we're waiting back in the day.
Oh, you're waiting in the temple, right? Okay.
Well, let's talk about your growing up. So that would have been interesting. So you grew up a member of the Reorganized Church. You had a single mom raising you, and she was very devout in the faith. What was that like growing up?
Yeah, my mom loved the Restoration, loved Joseph Smith. My middle name is Joseph, after the prophet Joseph Smith. And I grew up as a very young boy in a little town in Iowa called Lamoni, named after King Lamoni, as you can imagine. And so we were there for a number of years. And from a religious standpoint, my mother did everything she could to really embed in me a spiritual foundation. She read the Book of Mormon to me. We prayed together. We did all those things. And my mother was a really devout, religious person.
So, growing up with that experience, what was life like for you as far as school and things like that? How were you received, and what was religion like, in this area?
Yeah, so when I grew up in my teens, actually the Reorganized Church, this is their headquarters, and so there were lots of members of the Reorganized Church around here. One of my two best friends were both members of the Reorganized Church, and lots of congregations around. So the feeling was very much this was kind of a restoration town, if you will. Independence here. So I think the feeling was really one of, in my growing up, it was really one of, this is an important place, and there's a reason why we're here. And that was something that my mom really emphasized for each of us as kids. I'm the youngest of 5 children, and so a lot of times they wear out in terms of like trying to do things with their kids and help them along in certain paths and so forth. I think she actually gained strength. My mother gained strength, so she tried to pour everything she could into me as a young person. So from a religious standpoint. Well,
I was reading a story that she coerced you a little bit, or invited you to go on a church history tour, and you end up visiting the Sacred Grove. And a lot of us have Sacred Grove experience, but yours was literal.
Yeah, mine was literal. It was sort of remarkable. That year, it was my first opportunity. It was the year that I had just turned 14. It was really my first opportunity to have a summer job and to make money. And I was a poor kid. I was a single mother, 5 kids. We lived on food stamps, and we were a poor family. And so that was my first opportunity to really get a summer job and to be able to buy things for myself, things that I wouldn't get otherwise. And so when she said, like, we're going to go on this church history trip, up into upstate New York and so forth, I was very resistant. I didn't want any part of that. But as it turns out, we go through all those locations, and at the age of 14, I'm there in the Sacred Grove at a time in which, just a few months before, something pretty dramatic had happened in the church of my upbringing. And so I was thinking about religion. I was thinking about, and I don't know how better to describe it, but sort of like this, the light switch went on for me from a religion standpoint. So there I am. I want to know, like, what church is true, really? And my question was different than the prophet Joseph Smith's in that I had narrowed it down to it. It had to be a restoration group because I believed in Joseph Smith. I believed in the Book of Mormon. And so there I am, 14 in the Sacred Grove, pondering and searching for that same question.
Well, you took the initiative and you started going to two churches, which is pretty impressive, right? Because most of us, try to get us to go to at least an hour or two now, but you went to the RLDS church and the LDS church trying to see how things are going. At what point do you decide, I'm thinking actually the Church of Jesus Christ is where I want to be?
Yeah. So, as you said, I made a decision. I wanted to, I was familiar with the different types of restoration organizations, and to be clear, there's the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, there's the Reorganized, now the Community of Christ, but there's other branches too. There's other branches, for lack of a better term, but I had decided, it had to be one of those two. And so for a couple months, I went to both of them, and I went in the morning and to my own congregation. And then in the afternoon, I went to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I didn't tell anybody, and I tried to hide in the back so no one would see me and leave before everything. And that was in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. But I will tell you, right from the very beginning, I could tell a significant difference, and I felt that. Felt it both from a spiritual standpoint, but also from a doctrinal and teaching standpoint. So.
Well, your mom said you got to be 18 before you get baptized. You decided to get baptized.
Yes.
How hard was that decision? But once you decided, was that this is what you were going to do?
Yeah. For me, when I knew, I have not that many gifts, but this is a gift I have. When I know something is true, I will make the decision, and I'm not going to turn back. So I made that decision, and at the time I was 16 when I made that final decision, and I went first to tell my mother. And she was the first one to know. And I'll just say it didn't go that well. It was one of those things where you're like, maybe that was a wrong decision to go to her first. But I went to her and said, I've decided to join the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I suspect I said Mormon at the time. And she didn't even say anything to me. Just went straight to the phone, which was on the wall at the time, and called relatives and pastors and so forth. And so I spent the next while sorting through all that, but I knew it was true. I had felt the Spirit, and I had been taught the doctrine that it was just remarkable. And so, as you said, I did have to wait for a couple of years until I turned 18, and turned 18 in March, and then graduated from high school in May, and then I was baptized in June.
And then not too long after that, started a mission in Guam.
Yes, that's right.
What was that experience like for you?
Oh, it was unbelievable. I had no idea where Guam was. I thought maybe, I submitted my papers to be a missionary, and the timing was great. I joined June, just after I turned 18, and then 1 year later, on July, after turning 19, I went on my mission. And I remember opening my mission call. I opened it with my mother, and we opened it up and looked at it and said, the Micronesia Guam mission. And I had no idea where that was. Neither did my mom. We had to go get an atlas. Again, back to the days. We went to get an atlas and looked it up and found I thought it was in South America. It turns out it's in the Pacific Islands. But that was a life-changing experience. It was my testimony of the restoration of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints was firm. But that really that burned in my heart, really a commitment to serve my whole life.
When did you decide, a career path? Did you go to school before your mission, or did you?
Yes.
Until after?
Yeah, I went to 1 year of school. So one of the reasons why my mother thought it was a terrible idea for me to serve a mission, among other reasons, other than she didn't believe the church, but she thought it was a waste of time and all those. And part of that was that I had a full ride football scholarship to play at the university I went to, and so it would be giving that up. And so. So I had made that decision that I was going to do that, and but early on I had a fairly early decision that I always wanted to go to law school. I thought I love I love politics. I love, all that it could be. And so I had made that decision, and my mom knew that. And so to her, this was a tremendous waste of time and a delay in that effort to get to that goal. So,
well, I was interested. You played football at Central Missouri, is that what?
Yeah.
And then you played football, but you also played the violin.
Yes.
A nice combination.
Contrasting things that people don't often think that they go together. I started the violin actually when I was 5 years old. My mother got me into lessons, and I had also tried piano and other things, and nothing really stuck. But I started when I was 5 with the violin, and that stuck. And I played all the way through junior high and high school, and then in college I played. And they, University of Central Missouri, thought it was such a really unique thing. They did articles about it and took photographs. I've got myself in sort of our family history box of pictures and so forth. I got pictures of me with my full football uniform on, pads and everything, playing the violin. So
that's funny. What position did you play, brother?
I play defensive end.
Defensive end.
Yeah.
So you lull them to sleep with the violin. And
yeah, exactly. And then come after him. Yeah.
So when did you decide to go to BYU Law School? Obviously you have to apply, but was that a goal you wanted to go out to BYU?
It wasn't. I wanted to go to a very good law school. I mean, I worked. I was trying to work hard in my undergraduate to do well, so I had lots of choices. And after I went on my mission, I came back. Really, I began to say, look, this is a great law school. If I can get into BYU Law School, and the truth of the matter is, I'm not sure I can get in today. But I was able to, get into the law school, and I didn't have like a lifelong dream of going to BYU Law School. I don't mean to say that, so the dean is like, but I really wanted to do law school, and I wanted to get a great education. And boy, I tell you, the law school at BYU was phenomenal in so many ways. I was so grateful to be able to have that opportunity.
So when did you meet your wife, Rebecca? Was that at BYU? Where did that happen?
So actually it was sort of in between. It was actually here in Independence. We met at the Young Single Adult branch at the time in the Independence, Missouri State. She was back from her studies at BYU. I think it was at the end of her first year. And then I was back. I had studied abroad for a semester in Budapest, Hungary. And then so we came back, and we just had a few weeks at the in the YSA branch before she went back out to school and I went back to school. And so we met at the YSA branch, and it was just a couple of weeks later, I think maybe even a week later, we went on our first date. But so my favorite of all time story, if it doesn't take too much time.
Oh no, please.
Favorite all-time story is that about that is we had met, and this was in July. I got back in July from my study abroad, and kind of the end of July, and she was heading out sort of mid-August. And we went on one date, and we went on I think a second date, and then her family was going to go on a family vacation, and it was a float trip in southern Missouri, which is a very, very common, great family vacation. And we were over at her house one evening, and her parents called her back into the room to talk to her, and they're like, we're going on our family vacation. Do you want to invite Jeremiah on this family? I mean, we'd only known each other for like 2 weeks, and Rebecca's like, I have no idea. I probably thought, what is wrong with my parents? And of course, I'm a willing participant, so they came back, and I'm like, absolutely, that would be great. So that was how we met.
Now 5 children, right? You have 5 children?
Yep, 5 children. And our youngest right now is on a mission in California. And we've got 2 that are married. We have 6 grandchildren right now. And so just, a lot of great things. I mean, there's teenage years. I don't want to give I don't want to give the impression to people who might be listening that the Morgans didn't go through challenging times with teenagers and even as adults. I mean, trying to work through that it's no joke. But our family is wonderful, and a tribute to my wife, of course. I'm just along for the ride, I suppose.
Well, let's talk about your career path, because you did a lot of things. You clerked, you had a lot of positions in government with law, and currently the Deputy Attorney General for the state of Missouri.
What does that mean?
Yeah, what does that mean? What does that mean? It sounds really cool, but what does that mean?
Sounds really cool. Well, it's Deputy Attorney General. So the Attorney General is an elected position, and in this case, he has 2 Deputy Attorney Generals. And one is over the criminal side of the office. Not that the attorneys are criminals, but oversees the part of the office that handles criminal work. And the other side is that handles all the civil work, like contracts and, employment things and so forth. So I'm the Deputy Attorney General that oversees all of the attorneys and the office that does all the civil side of the office. Things like, if somebody challenges a statute in Missouri as unconstitutional. I just finished, for example, a 2-week trial where Missouri had passed a law that said minors can't receive medical treatment for transgender, treatment, and so that was challenged, and that's something that the Attorney General's office then defends. And so I worked on that trial most recently, just finished last week, actually.
Most of us, the only trial we see is like Raymond Burr,
Right.
What is it like, in a real trial with those kind of things?
Yeah.
What's it like?
Well, what you see in the courtroom is dramatic arguments, dramatic statements, and critical questions to witnesses and so forth. I mean, truthfully, being a lawyer is a lot of preparation work to get to that. You have months and months like this. The trial that I was just finished. The case actually started over a year ago. And so we go through, we collect information, we collect all the evidence, and then we put that together and put on witnesses who could talk about those things. And the leading up to it can be 12, 13 hours, days, where you're really, you're getting to know the information you put on it. So it can be fairly tense. And so in the case we just finished, 2 weeks of trial, of testimony from experts and people that are, went through this experience and what their experience was like. And so it can be, but to go and observe can be a really eye-opening in terms of how evidence and information comes in about decisions that juries or judges make. So.
You're a busy man because you've got that going on, long days, but also as an Area 70. What does that entail? You travel a lot, you go to state conferences and such. What are your responsibilities?
Yeah. Well, really kind of two pieces to that. The first piece is that I have responsibility for different stakes in certain areas. Like I have responsibility to help coordinate with and, help support and so forth. So that's true of this area. So I have stakes in Missouri and Kansas and Illinois and previously Iowa, with Nauvoo and so forth. I had responsibility to work with all those stake presidents and the other leaders there, and temple presidents and mission presidents and so forth. So I work on a day-to-day basis with them. But in addition, so that's one piece of it. What can I do to help them, and as they lead their stakes, stake presidents, stake relief society presidents, and so forth. And the other piece of it is that the church, the Quorum of the 12, the president of Quorum of the 12, because we're, as 70s, we're under the direction of the 12. In fact, the Doctrine and Covenants says you, as the 12, you are to go to the 70 and none other, right? Before any other, I should say. And so they give us assignments to go to preside or speak at different state conferences, not everywhere in the world, and not even everywhere in the United States, but certain, within a certain range that what we call our area. And so I might be in Idaho, I might be in Canada, I could be in Minneapolis or Milwaukee or Denver, or we were recently in Sheridan, Wyoming, and so we go and we spend the weekend there working with the leaders and also speaking and having an amazing spiritual experience. It's remarkable.
I'm just saying you have to watch. You can't show any allegiances to football. You got Missouri, you got Kansas, you got Iowa. You gotta keep the Chiefs. Everyone likes the Chiefs, right?
Yeah, right. It's not hard. I mean, I think we're building the Chiefs fan base beyond just the Kansas City. Well, with Andy Reid and the influence that he and Tammy have, not only in this area but just in the general, the LDS population and as well as the sports population.
Yeah, they're lots of fun. You've had a lot of experience. Been a branch president, bishop, a stake president, area authority. Talk about this, and you were heavily involved with the Kansas City Temple. When you're involved with the leading up to it and promoting all that kind of thing. What's give us a take of the feel for the church in this area, the growth, excitement of the members, and etc.
Yeah. Just like maybe a vignette to describe it. That kind of growth. A number of years ago, when we moved back, Rebecca and I, from law school and came back, took position and so forth. Originally, we moved into the Liberty, Missouri state. And at the time, I mean, steak was great, all those things. And I can remember I was assigned to go speak in a couple places, and one of those places is in Gallatin, Missouri, kind of a rural location. And the first time I spoke there, it was maybe 30, 35 people. That was it. And it was in an old funeral home, and just, you know, it was small, and it had that kind of feel. But just a few years later, I didn't speak there again for a few years. Then I went back a few years later, and there were hundreds of members of the church, and it had gone into a ward. It had split into more than one ward. I mean, it's just to see the growth of the church in this area has been remarkable. And some people might not appreciate, you know, sort of the strength of the church in the Kansas City area. But boy, we have a very mature, strong leadership, and with the construction of the temple has only really solidified that strength. I mean, when we had the open house, one, remarkably, we had no issues at all. No problems at all. In fact, the Rome, Italy temple and the Kansas City temple were announced in the very same general conference. And I don't know how many years, but the Kansas City temple was finished almost a decade before, or approximately a decade before the Rome temple was finished as well. So really, and it has been embraced, and people honor it, and they look up to it as a part of the Kansas City landscape, really.
I know you're involved in a book that was put together about that. In fact, in this building, I was looking through it, and it was awesome. It had pictures of the temple and also stories from people. What was your involvement in that? And it sounds like an amazing project.
Well, it was an amazing project. What was even more amazing is that you know, it wasn't even on the plans. They were collecting materials from a history standpoint. I love history, and I love you know, making sure we record it and so forth. And it wasn't even in the plans. And then nearing the end of the open house and coming close to the dedication, I was like, we need to do something to commemorate this, to remember, and to, you know, collect all those materials, not just in random people's hands and so forth. So let's put together a book, like a coffee table book. And that book was put together with all its stories and pictures and beautifully designed and all that, I think in 8 weeks.
Wow. This is not a small book. This is
not a small book. And it is a remarkable. We printed one set of it, and it was we completely ran out of it. We had, I think, 800 to 1,000 people who put in requests. We didn't have any, so we actually printed another set of it, so people could have copies of it.
You know, I'm wondering with you know, the Reorganized Church, Community of Christ, and others, how is the church recognized here? Do people know, like, you are the Church of Jesus Christ, or Mormon, which seems so foreign to us at this point now, these few years later? But how is the recognition of the church in this area?
I think the recognition of the church is really strong. Now, there is certainly some confusion because if here in Independence and Greater Kansas City area, there's lots of different restoration groups, branches, and so forth. You have the Church of Christ, which is, you know, colloquially referred to as the Hedrickites. Oh, yes. Which is they own the temple lot, or a portion of the temple lot there. They're one branch. They have the Remnant Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which has another segment. And so for many people, in their minds, it's really all part of one, right? And in fact, I was one time, there was a law firm that wanted to do a kind of, you know your religion series. They did a Know Your Religion series, and so they invited somebody from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It happened to be me, and then also the presiding bishop from the Reorganized Church, then the Community of Christ. And they had us come and explain sort of the differences between the churches, because in the minds of, you know, I think it was 60 or 70 lawyers that they were there for that luncheon. We were exactly the same. And the truth of the matter is, I mean, there's so much that we have in common in terms of what we believe, you know, in the Book of Mormon and so forth. Now we're diverging a bit, of course, but in many people's eyes, we're sort of, it's like one large group. But I think I mean, the church is well respected, and people think very well of the church. And just as a little anecdote of that. I was in that trial I was telling you about that it happened in the last couple of weeks. I was walking down to the courthouse. This is in Jefferson City, which is where my main office is. So walking down to the courthouse, and I see this security vehicle like in the middle of the road and just stopped blocking traffic. It's sort of like a security detail from the president. I'm
Sure.
looking around. What is this? And it's the governor. The governor hops out. The Missouri governor hops out, and he immediately recognizes me and walks up to me. I'm right there on the street. He's like, Jeremiah, and gave me a big hug. And so that is a pretty good reflection of where the church is, viewed from the government. And I was just telling an example of that as well, and that is, I was at a governor's cabinet meeting, which is with all the leaders of all the departments and agencies and so forth. And I happened to be there representing the Attorney General. And the governor walks in, and he recognizes me. He comes up to me and says, Jeremiah, great to have you here, and gives me a big hug. And he goes to start the meeting, and he says, wait, before we start this meeting, I just need to tell you about what Jeremiah's church is doing in Missouri. Mm. And he proceeds to tell, 5 or 7 minutes about what the church is doing to help support the communities. It was just a beautiful recognition of where the church has come, in the eyes of the state of Missouri.
Mm. Well, Jeremiah Morgan, thank you so much for taking the time to come and talk to us and for the invite to come out here. It's been a pleasure to get to know you and others out here in this area. What a great area to be in. So thank you so much.
It's an amazing place. Thank you.
Thank
you
you.
for the time.
Appreciate it. You bet.
Appreciate it.